What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Kara Corey here, registered dietitian. And if you are new here, then welcome. Be sure to stick around and hit that subscribe button. You can also hit the post notification bell as well. That way it lets you know each and every time that I upload. Today we're going to do a little story time, a little coffee chat with Kara, if you will, and take a trip down memory lane to my first job as a registered dietitian. One of my first jobs was right when I graduated my bachelor's degree in dietetics. I hadn't taken my exam as a registered dietitian yet, but I was looking for a job and I had just decided I was going to go to grad school. So I'm like, okay, what would be just a summer job, because I can't take anything full time because I'm going to be going to grad school. Well, an opportunity arose, and one of my friends who was also in the nutrition program, Becky, found this weight loss camp that was in New York, and she was going to work at it for the summer. And I'm like, man, that sounds really cool, and that'd be really cool to do it together. So I started looking things up and applied. I ended up doing a phone interview, and they had different positions. They had positions where you were just a camp counselor, and then they had the position that I was applying for, which was the nutrition instructor position, which I thought would be really cool. A lot of my schooling as a dietitian focused on being able to talk in front of people, to be able to present information, educate others, etc. So I thought this would be like a really fun position. At the same time, I was really nervous because I was going to be leaving my then boyfriend at the time for an entire summer. It was the full summer. It was like the end of June through the end of August. So I think that ends up being like 8 weeks? I think it was 8 weeks, yes, because campers could come either the first 4-week session or people could come the whole 8-week session. So anyways, I wanted to share with you guys my experience as a camp counselor at a weight loss camp, because I think a lot of people think about weight loss camp and they think about what you see on TV and the movies and a whole stigma surrounding fat camp. I can't speak from the perspective of being a camper, but I just kind of wanted to let you guys know my thoughts from being an actual counselor. I was a counselor and a nutrition instructor, so I kind of saw things from a different perspective, and there was some stuff that I really liked about this model in this camp, and I'm not going to mention it because they are still in business, so I don't want it to look like I'm trying to talk down on their program. There were some really good things about it, and then there were some other things that made me extremely uncomfortable, especially being a new dietitian. So yeah, I left that summer, went up into the Adirondacks, and away I went. This job was a 24/7 job. You didn't really get time off. You were pretty much like, you were on the clock. You did get one day off a week, but you didn't get like a full 24 hours, honestly. Like, you could leave at 8 a.m. and I think I had to be back at like 9 p.m. It was wild. Like, I hadn't really worked that hard where it was like 24/7, 7 days a week, where you were responsible for human beings. I mean, I babysat as a kid, but you were responsible for a group. So the way it worked, because I got the position as the nutrition counselor or the nutrition instructor, I thought at first I would just be the nutrition instructor, but I was duo in that I did teach classes, and then I also, with another counselor, I had a co-counselor, we had a group of, it was an all-female camp, so we had a group of females, and they're all separated out by age group is the way they did it. Each group had 2 counselors to it, and I want to say my age group, now I want to say they were like 12 to 14 years old. It wasn't the youngest group of girls. I think they went from like age 9 or 10 all the way up to 18-year-olds is how it worked. It was a very broad range of kids, honestly. You had some who were truly kids, and then others who were 17, 18 who were women. And so all of them were there. I think it made sense that they were all separated out by age group. There was some like intermingling and things like that depending on what the activities were. But it was, I guess, going there as as a counselor, I had no idea what to expect. I really didn't know how this was going to go. It just looked really fun. It looked really cool. We were going to do a ton of activities. I was going to teach kids about nutrition. We were going to eat healthy, and I was going to help these kids hopefully make some really great changes. So that was really kind of the gist of what I knew going into this summer and into this position. It really ended up being quite a big learning experience for me, and it was quite grueling, actually. Just the fatigue that I felt at the time, being early 20s. I can't imagine how these kids felt, because it was extremely active. There was a lot required of you. You really, it was a weight loss camp, but there was just a lot required of you physically and mentally. So I guess let me first kind of give you an overview of what a day would look like. So every day you were required to get up at 7 a.m. And as a counselor, we had to get our girls up at 7 a.m. and you started your day with a 3-mile walk. There was one group that would go off for a jog, but for the most part, most people chose to do the walk. So a 3-mile walk first thing in the morning. And that could take you anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, depending on, how fast you walked. But that was really the premise, was kind of instilling in the girls that behavior of getting up, starting your day with exercise, kind of what I promote here as well. That's when you have no excuses. You carve out that time in the morning and you make it a habit. So every day at 7 a.m. we had to be outside. It was a very high expectation for you as counselors that you had all your girls out there and accounted for. Otherwise, it didn't look so good for you as the counselor. So me and my co-counselor, it was tough. It was tough getting these girls up every morning. I didn't even want to get up every morning, but you had to get them up, get them ready, get them out the door, and be ready for the walk. So it was in the summertime. The weather was beautiful. You'd get your 3-mile walk in, and then you would head back to, we stayed at a college university, so we had dorms. So most of the girls had a roommate, and it was the college situation with showers and everything like that. You'd get ready. You would head off to breakfast. So we got to utilize kind of the dining hall situation, which made it really nice. Get ready for breakfast. Everything was very scheduled and regimented, as if you were at school, except I feel like it was even more intense. Everything was scheduled out. Your morning walk, the time you had in the morning to get ready, to get to breakfast, and then started your day of activities. And then you had lunch built in there, you had dinner built in there, and we had an 8 p.m. snack built in there as well. So your day was going from 7 a.m. to usually about 8:30, 9 p.m. is when we would kind of be heading back to the dorm rooms for the night, I should say, getting showered up, going to sleep, and getting ready for the next day. So each and every day was very much scheduled and regimented like that. The girls had different activities that they would do on a day-to-day basis. For me, it was a little bit different because I did teach the nutrition classes. So during the day, my co-counselor, she kind of took the girls and did the bulk of the activities while I was teaching the nutrition classes. So I want to say I taught nutrition classes every day of the week, the Monday through Friday. I would teach usually 2 or 3 classes back to back. So one thing that I was bummed about is I didn't get to participate in all the other activities because I had to be present, for each and every group of girls that would come through and do the nutrition teaching. With the nutrition education piece, it was kind of interesting in a way, being a brand new, not even a RD yet. I didn't have my credential, but they pretty much handed you a binder. I met with a couple of the directors for the camp, and they gave me a binder with pretty much my set curriculum in it. It wasn't anything I developed or needed to develop. It was their set nutrition curriculum that they taught, that they promoted at all their camps. So it was all packaged up, ready to go for me, which was kind of nice. I didn't really get the whole package though until right when I got to camp. So it didn't give me time ahead of time to digest all the information that I was going to be teaching these girls. And for the most part, I really did like a lot of what I taught. I was able to still make it my own, keep it the principles that they wanted, but really kind of make it my own. And I really do enjoy teaching. So it was a really fun experience kind of teaching all all the different age groups of girls and kind of seeing the differences in questions they'd ask and how they'd respond to the information that I would give them. The one thing that really struck me, and this was night one when I got there, myself, Becky did come as well. So she, was going to become a dietitian as well. So she had that background. And then there was another counselor there that also had the background of nutrition. And one of the first things we learned on night one with part of what they taught in terms of the diet component was a low-fat diet, extremely low-fat diet. It wasn't even just low-fat diet. It was keeping your fat grams at 20 grams or less. And at the time, being a very new dietitian, if you will, I felt really uncomfortable with that. All three of us did. And actually, I remember one of the girls, she almost was going to leave over it because she did not feel right about it. It didn't sit well with us. And we actually did discuss it with the director of the program. 20 grams of fat for anyone, but for these growing teens who, you have a need, especially if you're going to absorb any of your vitamins that are fat soluble, you have to have enough fat in your diet. You have to have enough fat within a meal, within your day, to even be able to absorb your fat soluble vitamins. And it just made all of us feel very uncomfortable. And this was day one. This is kind of what we were walking into. I guess I didn't realize before I went into this program how strict that diet piece was. So, at the same rate, I wasn't confident enough, I feel like, in my own, as a dietitian now, I would have been like out the door. I wouldn't have even taken the job because it's not something I would promote. But at the time, it was the job I took. I was committing to going away for the summer, so I was gonna stick it out. And we did try to do our due diligence by educating that we didn't necessarily agree with it, but it didn't go very far. And I don't know if this camp still practices that same principle. I'd be interested to see if they do, but that was the one thing that really did not sit well with me. So the way the diet worked was still basic tools that I utilized was self-monitoring. All the girls, including the counselors, had to follow everything. Counselors were not exempt. You were to follow the diet. You were to track your food intake, track your fat grams for the day, and also self-monitoring of your steps. At the time, everyone was issued a pedometer. I don't even know if they make those anymore because everything's app-based. But we weren't walking around with cell phones at the time. So everyone had a pedometer. You monitored your steps. It was all about movement, aiming for 20,000 steps a day and trying to keep those fat grams less than 20 grams. So when you went to the dining hall, your options were set up for you. I mean, you had like a main meal, if you will, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You were able to go through and get the main meal. But then there was two other sections. There was like a fruit bar and a salad bar. And sometimes there'd be like fat-free yogurt over there, fat-free cottage cheese. And those were kind of your unlimited freebies. Sometimes there was soup, but it was basically, you could have unlimited amounts of both of those, your fruits, your vegetables, your fat-free items, whether it was like soup, cottage cheese, or yogurt, and then you could have the main meal. The counselors were allowed to go back up and have like an extra main meal, which always made me feel uncomfortable because, the rest of the girls couldn't do that. But that was ultimately how the setup of the meals went. I feel like the food was good, if that's a question you have. Like, I feel like the food was really good. I was a vegetarian at the time, so I Boca burgered myself to death. Like, that's all I ate was Boca burgers. Condiments were limited. Like, you could have ketchup. You weren't allowed any salt, so it was like garlic powder. It was teaching to utilize like your spices and herbs and things like that are all, good things to promote. But the diet piece, it did make me uncomfortable. Before I jump more into what I didn't like about the diet, in terms of the nutrition education classes, it wasn't really a focus on you need to eat 20 grams of fat or less a day. It was your basic principles. It was teaching about portion size. It was teaching about finding what triggers you, teaching about eating out and how to make healthier choices, talking about healthy fats and unhealthy fats. So I did try to do my best. I think the educational program was a good setup, and I tried to utilize that time to really kind of focus more on sustainability with some of the behaviors that the girls were learning. But what I want to say too, in a nutshell, is like the thing that was really tough about me being there as a counselor is a lot of these girls, and I can't speak for people, but I don't think it was their choice to be there, right? You know, their parents sent them there, and you could tell some girls just did not want to be there. It felt like, unfortunately, I heard things like their parents sent them away every summer because their parents wanted to go on vacation and not kind of deal with their kid. So I think this is just the reality of some things that happen with any camp, if you will. Some of these girls were there not because they wanted to be there. And I think that's a really challenging thing because I can't imagine how it would feel to be a kid who was overweight, and teased and made fun of and just trying to figure out their own life, and then have their parents send them away to a weight loss camp. The whole thing's really like conflicting for me, even though I was part of it, and I do agree with helping to teach kids at a younger age. I just think it's a fine balance. I mean, in the job I work in today, the dietitians work with kids from ages 6 years old up to 18 and do nutrition classes and try to teach them, you know, healthy things. But this was a very extreme scenario. It was like Biggest Loser, that type of extreme measures for kids. And so that's what was tough, is if these kids aren't in a place where they're like, Mom, I want to change, and I want to go to this camp. And you saw these kids there that were just struggling. They were struggling with being there and feeling bad about themselves and their self-esteem. And as such a, like, as being, like, I was 21 years old, I didn't really know how to deal with that and how to be there for them emotionally. You know, I just knew I was there to teach them about nutrition principles, make sure they were safe, make sure they got to their activities. And so it was a lot emotionally. And yeah, I don't know. That piece was really tough for me. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting the girls that were there that were suffering with issues with depression, that were suffering with past suicide attempts and issues with cutting and self-harm behaviors. I mean, there was a lot of serious issues that were going on, that can go on with any of us. The good thing about this program, though, is it wasn't just, here's your diet, you need to over-exercise and your problems will be solved. The program did also implement CBT, which is well researched and well studied and utilized in our psychiatric hospital that I work in, but it's cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's really necessary for a lot of different issues, not just weight loss, not just mental health. It can help with things just like my tinnitus that I suffer with, which is ringing in the ear. So it's really beneficial for a lot of different issues or disorders that are going on. So the girls did have to participate in CBT as well. So it wasn't just like they worked out all day and they did a nutrition class and barely ate. There was the therapy component as well. I wasn't part of that, but they did have staff psychologists meeting with these girls. So I do think that was a good resource, that was part of this program. There was a lot of other really great kind of activities that were built into the program. I mean, we were doing outdoor activities, but then I believe, like, depending on I can't remember now how it was measured. Like, if it was based on like how well you did with your steps and your journaling and all that, but girls would be eligible to go on these other really cool day trips. There was whitewater rafting you could go to. We ended up doing this whole like ropes course thing in the woods, like for team building, and that was really cool too. I remember being really freaked out, and then it was just so cool to see some of these girls who, you know, knew had self-esteem issues, and then they're all cheering each other on, and they just did this crazy shit like up a tree, and I'm like, whoa, and you could just tell how empowering it was. So there was a lot of really cool stuff there, beyond just like doing kickball and burning calories. We did a couple trips too. I remember I got to go on a trip to a mall. Like we got to take the girls to the mall and go shopping for the day. So there was some other fun stuff built in there too. It was, like I said, it was really exhausting as a counselor because you were going from like start to finish, and I would just pass out at the end of the night. It was a lot of work for me, so I can't imagine being a growing teen, how that would feel. But we also did a talent show too. That was really fun. Like, so there was a lot of fun stuff like that built in there, in addition to the activity and the educational piece as well. So yeah, the girls could go for a 4-week session, and then they kind of did like a graduation ceremony at the end. And that's when the parents would come in. It was like 1 or 2 days the parents would come up. I would do kind of a nutrition exit talk with them, and a couple of the other can't remember, like group directors or whatever. They were there too to participate and just kind of answer questions about what we had worked with the girls on and how to like continue the dietary piece when they left. So there was some of that. It wasn't just like it was all on the girls. Like they did get the family involved as well, which I just think is so, so important. If the family's not on board with implementing and doing the same things, you can't expect your kid to do that. You know, I really think it's got to be a whole family approach. So we at least did that, and then I did that again at the end of the summer too before they left. I will say, like, it's interesting now in hindsight when I look back, because, you know, I've gone through extremes with competing and doing my own like fitness programs and stuff locally and stuff like that. But working at this camp was the first time I feel like I struggled with my own issues with food and created like control obsession issues with food that I don't feel like I had before. I mean, I think I had my own triggers there with my body and, you know, kind of body dysmorphia, if you will, but I followed the same diet those girls did. And I think some of the counselors had their own like stash of food that they'd eat at night. I never made up for the calories. Like, unless it was my day off, I ate what the girls ate, and a lot of the counselors lost a lot of weight, and it almost became like this like kind of not cult feel, but like competitive feel. Like you really were into it, and you had to be. Like, as a counselor, if you weren't journaling and doing everything you're supposed to be doing, you would get in trouble. Some of the counselors got talked to because they got in trouble for not journaling and not like following the diet as strictly, which I look back on now and I'm like, you fed into eating disorders with the counselors and likely some of these kids as well. But I remember I got a thing of, they were called Fig Newmans, and we would get 2 for the 8 p.m. snack, and they had some left over, and so each of the counselors got like a package. And I took a package of Fig Newmans back to my dorm room, and I remember sitting down and I ate the entire package. And, you know, like a normal pack, like, I don't know how many cookies would be in there, like 20 or something. I ate the whole thing. And I remember just sitting there like, I didn't even like know it happened. Like I was just, what just happened? I ate an entire package of Fig Newmans? Like, what the hell? And it didn't really click at the time, but now I can look at it and I'm away from it, and I knew long ago. But that was like my first time I ever, like, I guess if you want to call that a binge, I literally was physically starving is what that came down to. But that was the first time I felt kind of like out of control with food, and it was that restrictive eating, and it was obsessive, and the amount of calories I was eating as a counselor there was not healthy. And I'm not saying any of this to like trigger anybody. I'm just being honest, because this is how this camp impacted me. And maybe that was it was an interesting learning experience for me. But I know a lot of people say, oh, you competed, so that's where the issues could come from. But I really feel like this camp impacted me. Like, that was the first time I ever struggled with that type of feeling and that kind of obsession with food. And then it was actually challenging for me when I left that camp, you know, because I had lost probably, I don't know, we had to weigh ourselves too as counselors. Like, you had to do everything the girls do, and I understand that, but I think the counselors should have been able to eat more. I don't know how you make that fit. The whole thing is just was challenging, and you were almost commended about losing weight while you were there as a counselor too. So it was very easy to kind of like fall victim to that when I didn't need to lose any weight. I was a growing girl still at 21, kind of. Yeah, you're kind of still growing as a woman at 2021. You're still developing, but yeah, so for me, that impacted me and my relationship with food. It was 8 weeks of my life, but how interesting how that 8 weeks of my life actually, it impacted me longer than that, if that makes sense. Like the impact of such a short span of time in all my years on this world. Like I think back to that time and how it impacted me, between the obsession with tracking every single little number and losing weight and looking at my body and more exercise is better and all those things at such a young age. It did take a toll on me, and it makes me think how these girls are doing now that I worked with. And there are a couple actually that I wouldn't say I keep in touch with, but follow me through social media, and I've heard from them. And that was really cool to kind of build those relationships and have an impact on these girls. But I guess for me, the camp now, looking back on it, and even then looking back on it, it's a conflict for me as a dietitian. It wouldn't really be something that I would ever recommend because of how extreme it was, because of how I know it impacted me, and it was a lot. And I feel like it was hard to transition back to reality afterwards, and it made me wonder how much support was really there for these girls when they went back home and went to school. I think that support did need to come from their family dynamic, but they probably would have needed like continuing support, that aftermath, especially because the exercise was insane. It was so much. I mean, getting 20,000 steps a day. Do you guys track your steps? Like, homegirl over here is never hitting 20,000 steps, okay? Like, it takes a lot for me to hit 20,000 steps. That's a lot of planned activity, or that's like I am on vacation walking around all day long to get that type of activity. So I just think it was just too extreme. There were some really great principles there, but it was so extreme. And to transition back into real life, I don't know, especially at such a young age. And I was young when I went. And I remember coming back home, and I remember going to college and seeing how people reacted to my weight loss. Like, that was the first time I had abs. I remember taking a picture of my abs and sending them to Jason. I was like, look at this shit, I got abs. Like, this is crazy. So you could see where you kind of get into that mode where you're not really thinking about health or how you're going about it. You're looking at that aesthetic of it, which isn't healthy. But I remember going back to college, and, people either thought I looked horrible, or people were like, wow, what did you do this summer? You look great. And it was like, it was hard for me to kind of transition back out of that balance. And I mean, I love fat and I eat it all the time now, but at the time it was like, okay, I won't eat any fat. I'll put salsa on my salad instead of dressing, because dressing's bad. And that's really, for me, what like created this like good and bad food. Like, I just feel like for me personally, I had a lot of issues leaving that camp. So I guess I'm disclosing a lot of my own issues and where this came from, but it just, it was a wild experience. It was an interesting experience that I think a lot of people haven't gone through on the employee end of it, or maybe personally being a camper. I can't imagine as a camper how that impacted you. I know I sound like I'm being a total hater. I do think some of the girls that I knew there that had done the camp before did feel like they had learned some great things. They had learned just more about themselves throughout the process of going through this camp. They had learned to be more active, built their self-confidence, and learned some good behavior. So I don't think it was all bad. I don't know. I want to know what you guys think about weight loss camps. I just, now in my life, I feel like, children are delicate. And I think instilling in them, I'd be really interested to see the statistics, because I almost feel like the more you're focusing on this stuff with children, I just feel like it's going to lend itself to a life of obesity and issues with disordered eating and self-esteem issues. I could be totally wrong about that. I really haven't like researched it that completely, but it's just how I feel. I feel like it's too much. I think we should help kids make healthy changes. It's a very delicate thing to address, but I don't think sending them to a camp is the way to go. But I don't know. I was part of it all. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are for anyone that's watching this video. If you are someone that went to a weight loss camp or were sent there, if you feel comfortable sharing your experiences below, let's have a discussion in the comments, because I'm just kind of spouting off how things impacted me being there. And really, I want to know how it impacted you guys if you went through that type of an experience. I wouldn't change the fact that I did this 8 weeks of my life. I really wouldn't, but maybe I would. Maybe I would go back in time and not have done that job, because it's still, I don't know, it doesn't sit right. It doesn't sit right with me. It impacted me as a person, and I wonder how it impacted the girls who were there. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to story time that, talk about it. I feel like it's something that's not talked about a lot, but these camps are still around, and welcome to the vlog, Bruce Wayne. Bruce, you're huge. Get out of the way. You're going to get sent to weight loss camp. Could you sit down, please? Could you lay down? Okay. These camps still exist, and I think I remember, kids go off to like Girl Scout camp or skateboarding camp or camps, things that you want to do because they're like your passion and it's something you love, or I don't know if Girl Scouts is something you love. It's a skill building type scenario. But I just don't, what do you guys think about weight loss camp? Do you agree with it? Should it be a thing or should it not be a thing? I just want to know what you guys think about that, and I thought I would share that experience because it was really interesting. All right, so I'm going to wrap up the video there, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this little story time with me. If you did, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed and all that good stuff before you head on out of here. And tell me something good in the comments below. If you don't have your own personal experience with weight loss camp, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this or what my experience was. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and Bruce Wayne and I will see you in the next one.